Welcome everyone to Belgrave Square, and welcome to the Habanos World Day London 2024 seminar and exhibition in celebration of Trinidad's 55th birthday. My name is Colin Cameron. It's a privilege to be introducing this session today. Thank you very much for coming. For some of you, this is of course welcome back. There are some familiar faces from the cocktail party last night. I can see in your eyes the redemptive properties of Cuban cigars, and in particular the therapeutic qualities of a Trinidad, which have restored you this morning to perfect health. Now, last night we enjoyed a revival. The Robusto Extra Trinidad was restored to their roster after a period of hiatus. That was in London here. The joys of Trinidad will now be shared nationwide. There will be 55 events from coast to coast throughout the United Kingdom this evening, enjoying what some of us were lucky enough to enjoy last night. It's a tremendous thought. As for us right now, we have the chance to gain an even deeper and wider understanding of what will be enjoyed throughout the kingdom and what we enjoyed yesterday and what we've already been enjoying this morning. Now we have a panel of experts overseen by Nick Fulks, himself an expert, so a moderator who is far, far, far from moderate. At the interval after this panel session, there is an exhibition for you to see, Trinidad Habanos Past, Present and Future, some incredible archive material related to the House of Trinidad that you must take a moment to relish. Plus, Juana Ramos Guerra is to hand. Her fair hands rolled the original 1973 Trinidad offerings, so we're in the presence of greatness. And then after all that, after a little break, we have a presentation of who are worthy winners of the Trinidad pairing contest. Two fellows have found the perfect combination of Trinidad and a cocktail, so we'll all look forward to their revelation. If I may, I'd like to introduce the panel. Many of them need no introduction, so bear with me. Firstly, we have Ana Lopez, one of Hunters and Franco's own. Ana has been overseeing the Trinidad name since 1998, and it was then given to the wider world. So Ana is almost the mother of Trinidad, you might say. There are a number of candidates who could be the father of Trinidad. Nicole Barzagar today oversees all Cuban production, and he witnessed the moving of the Trinidad production from the Laguito factory. Emilio Espino is a scientist who worked for the Cuban Tobacco Research Institute. I rather hope that he would be wearing a white coat tonight, or today rather, but what he does bring is an extraordinary understanding of limited editions, and with Trinidad that will be 4 as of tomorrow. Max Gutman is responsible for bringing the best of Cuba to Mexico, so we'll allow Max to decide which is the older world. And as for the future, Rodrigo Gonzalez is joining us. He's Director of Strategic Marketing. He's actually been involved with Habanos now for 10 years, so it's happy birthday, I suppose, to him, as well as Trinidad. But he's going to ensure that Trinidad is with us for a long, long time in the future. Now, 2 final familiar faces. We have Edward Sahakian. He arrived in this country many years ago from Persia with a suitcase full of caviar. Today he has a treasure of knowledge about Cuban cigars in general, and Trinidad in particular. And finally, Kirby Allison is ubiquitous for his acclaimed films that capture the essence of Cuba and cigars. So Kirby brings a little bit of Hollywood to proceedings today. Welcome everyone, thank you very much for coming. Nick, over to you, thank you.
Okay. It's great if you applaud longer, you have to listen to us for a shorter time, so that's probably a good thing. Anyway, the introduction to the subject is Partagas, otherwise known as Trinidad, past, present and future. We all love Trinidad. It's been up, it's been down, it's back full steam. And I'm supposed to introduce you to the subject for 5 minutes, but we've got a real expert here to do that. So, I mean, it was like the Loch Ness Monster, this cigar, or the Yeti. People didn't know it existed, and then thanks to Ana Lopez, who's the mother of this great cigar, as we've known, she brought it to life and to the public attention. But Edward Sahakian, you were fortunate enough to be at the original Dinner of the Century in 1994, weren't you?
I was there, yeah, absolutely.
Can you explain who Marvin Shanken, for those people who are too young to remember these things, who Marvin Shanken is and what the dinner was about?
Marvin Shanken is a great publisher of lifestyle magazines, mainly wines and statistics, but also he was publishing a magazine called The Wine Spectator. And one day his representative, James Suckling, who was based in London, came to me and said, my boss wants to publish a magazine about cigars. And in those days, and I'm talking about late 80s, 88, 89, 90, 91, there was hardly anything written or published about cigars. I mean, if there was a news article with 3 lines about a cigar or a mention of tobacco, it was a collector's item. We would cut it out, send it to each other, put it on the wall. And of course, if somebody wants to publish a magazine all about cigars, it was great news. And I tried to encourage James as much as I could. And a few months later, Marvin Shanken himself came to London. We had lunch together, and he turned around to me and said, Eric, do you think it's a good idea I should publish a magazine? Would people buy the magazine? I said, of course they would. I wasn't sure they would, but I said they will. I said, there's no publication whatsoever about cigars. And he still was in doubt and hesitant. Therefore, he did a supplement about cigars in his famous
Wine Spectator.
Wine Spectator magazine. I still have a few copies of that, untouched, fresh. If anybody wants to see it, you're welcome to come to the shop. And it was a lovely article. He did interviews and mentioned all the shops that were in London. Started with Desmond Souter, Dunhills, Foxes, down with Robert Luce then, myself, and it just went like that.
And he held this amazing dinner in Paris.
Well, that was the other thing. The Marvin, he was very keen. He always wanted to do things. And he said, no, we should have a big celebration of cigars. He started publishing the Cigar Aficionado, as most of you know, and it was a sudden burst of popularity. And people realized they're not the only one who smokes cigars. They all realized, I'm not the only one. So and so, that, and the famous movie stars, the famous athletes, and politicians, everybody smokes cigars. It suddenly brought us up into the open. Marvin said, it would be nice if we have a cigar event in Europe. And I said, again, I tried to encourage it as much as I can. Next thing I know, he had organized with the 3 famous chefs in Paris, in the restaurant, and there was a cigar event. I've got a few photographs of that event. And it was a fantastic event. There were 3 chefs, each one did one portion of the meal, and then we smoked some delicious cigars. There were stacks of cigars which were auctioned, all signed by Fidel Castro himself. And among those auctions, there was a cigar box of 50, not even varnished, just plain cedar box of Trinidad's. And I think that's the one you got.
No, you got it.
No, I got the.
And you got it.
I got the Cohiba A, the Cohiba A size. And it was the first time that Trinidad really came to prominence. You know, if it was good enough to be auctioned in such a very special event, it must be something special. In time, we sort of considered it in the early years of it, where we thought it was not the Rolls Royce, but the Bentley of cigars.
Yeah.
But after a while, I think it's in many ways, if it's not the Rolls Royce, it's on the same level as the Rolls Royce of cigars. I was taken by it immediately when the Reyes came out. First it was a Fundadores. You all know it's a lovely cigar. We smoked it last night, 7.5 inches. The original one was just 38 grain gauges, well, perfect size. But a bit too long, so I used to cut them and smoke them in 2 halves, or 1/3 and 2/3, and I still do that sometimes. I nearly did it last night when I was giving this cigar resistance. And from there on, Trinidad just came out into the open. It was a sudden introduction to something beautiful that we were not aware of.
And is it true that you cornered the entire UK market in Trinidad Reyes and packs of 5?
Well, Gemma will have to verify that, but at one point I was told that, yeah, I love the packs of 5. You all know the packs of 5, they come individually packed like this. I keep always one in my pocket, not to smoke it, but just to know it's there. It's comforting. It keeps my heartbeat regular. And Gemma said, I think they're going to be discontinued. I said, well, that's terrible news. Can I have everything you have as a joke? And Gemma seriously said, yes, you can. And I said, well, why not? Please, can I have it? I don't know exactly how many it was, but I still have a few left.
5,000 packs, I think it was. You kept them in your car for a while, didn't you?
Well, I still keep some cigars. I have cigars everywhere. You will not believe it. All of you, we're all cigar lovers, and we all keep our cigars in mysterious and funny places. I have cigars in the boot of my car, in the dashboard of my car. I have cigars in the pocket of my jacket. I have cigars in my bathroom. You know, as I'm brushing my teeth in the morning, I'm looking at the cigar, which one I'm going to smoke after I finish brushing my teeth. But that's how we are. You know.
Is it the Reyes your perfect cigar? It used to be the Panatella from Cohiba, didn't it?
It was the Cohiba Panatella for many, many years. Then I went to the extent of having beautiful metal cases made exactly for that size in the shape of a fountain pen to hold the cigar. But then when I immigrated to the Reyes size, they became obsolete. They're all going to be part of Eddie's program to take care of them one day.
But if it's good enough for Edward Parkin, it's certainly good enough for us. Anna,
Okay.
you're the mother of Trinidad, but you also deserve a Nobel Prize for inventing the Siglo 6, I think, don't you, as well?
Well, it was not me who invented it.
No, always a good leader, you know, always a good leader. It's all my great team.
It was a thing well with Mr. Miguel Balzac.
No, you invented it, Anna.
Well,
Anyway, Anna, tell me, there's also another anniversary this year which might be overlooked. It's the 30th anniversary of Habanos SA. And you were there from the very beginning, weren't you?
yes.
Could you tell us a bit about those early days? Because when I was smoking cigars in the early 90s, there was not much. It was like it had been frozen since about 1980 or something like that, with the exception of Cohiba. And then things really got quite dynamic, didn't they? And that was Habanos.
Yes, correct. The 90s was a period of great excitement within the tobacco industry. One of the factors, as Edward already mentioned, was because of the cigar magazine that at the time started to produce lovely articles about the cigars, like for example Cigar Aficionados, but also we had La Marca de Cigar, here in Spain. And there was a great demand for cigars that everybody knows as the tobacco boom that was before. And in the 90s, we started with in 1992, the release of the Linea 1492
Yes,
in Cohiba.
your great invention.
That was a great event, yes. And after that, in 1994, Corporación Habanos was created. I mean, just before was Cuba Tobacco, and we are celebrating the 30 years of the Corporación Habanos. And with that started the period of creativity, we say, for the cigar in general, but particular for Habanos. With the creation of Habanos came the strategy of producing new brands. It was necessary not only for the market, but also because there was a legal need for the Cuban tobacco, for Habanos to have a brand that were in a good legal position in the market. And because of that, it was important to create new brands. In 1996, for example, was the release of Cuava.
Yes.
That was here in the United Kingdom. The inspiration was one of the frames that are in Hunter and Franco with just a catalog of double figurado sizes there, and at the time president of Habanos SA, that was the late Francisco Linares, came in here. I was inspired by that and said, oh, why can't we create something that we can recreate that period of double figurados? And started Cuava in 1996. Afterward was in 1997, Vegas Robainas. And well, 1998, Trinidad was born to the market, because as Edward already mentioned, the first time that we heard about Trinidad, even myself, was when that article of Marvin Shanklin came across in the Cigar Aficionado Fair issue. And after that, because of the auctions that took place in Paris and London and Venice, different places, there was an appetite for Trinidad. And we knew that it was necessary to have that brand in the market. And that was one of the factors that made possible to, I would say, steal Trinidad from that
This I
secret.
wanted to ask you, how did you separate it from this use in the government to being a commercial brand? How was that done? Was there much negotiation? Or?
Well, it's a combination of things. I mean, we really need to have Trinidad in the market to protect the brand.
Yes.
Because if you don't protect the brand through the commercial way, you cannot legally to have the right of using. So that's the factor. But also, Mr. Francisco Linares had been part of the Council of State. He, before joined to Habanos, he was a minister, and he knew about Trinidad, and he was Fidel Castro's friend, and probably he convinced him also to be able to have Trinidad for the market.
So it was a decision that went right to the top, right to Fidel Castro.
Well, more or less, at the time everything was.
I love the way that Fidel listens to you on these important things. Okay, but why was it only one size? Why did you only launch one size?
Why just one size? Well,
It's not really a brand, it's a single cigar.
well, yes, just one cigar, but was a fantastic cigar. We know that initially Trinidad was just known through the diplomat as now is known. At the time in Cuba we didn't say diplomat, it was just a Lancero size or Laguito number 1, and that's it, 38 engaged. But we need to have a different size for two reasons, because of two reasons. One of them, in order to make possible to have a different blend.
So this is the 2 ring gauge point, 38 to...
The 38 ring gauge was the original, but it was changed to 40 ring gauge
Yes.
for the new, for the fundadores. Because of, in that case, had a role played the master blender, Mr. Raúl Valladares, that he said he really needed to have a certain room to work in order to make a different blend. And for that, he needed slightly more space.
Okay.
let's say. And that was the reason of the 40 ring gauge, but also we wanted to separate from the original and to make something different.
So just one thing, was the original still used as a diplomatic gift after the creation of the brand?
Well, I don't think so. After the brand was created, everything will go
Everything, yeah.
for the engagement. But only one size, because also at the time was only produced at the Laguito factory. The Laguito factory was very small factory that didn't have capacity to produce too many cigars. Even for Coiba was struggled. Already we had the Linea 1492, and really they didn't have capacity to produce more than that. So we concentrated just in one size, and that was the Fundadores, I mean foundation, and that was the foundation of the
And why 24 cigars in a box? This has always perplexed me.
Well, it's not a secret. I think somebody already you know. The idea initially was 25. Not to put that as usual we do with all the cigar in vertical position, but horizontally. We wanted to have something different. But when we went to the industry and asked to the specialists there if we can place those cigars in row of 5, they said no, it didn't work, it was too narrow, and they recommended to have that in rows of 6. And from there, we started with 24, and that's the reason.
Very good. Just talk to me, because you oversaw, as well as inventing the Siglo 6, you also oversaw the brand extension of of Trinidad, which I think is really it's really when it became a proper brand. I mean, it was a novelty item. It was a curiosity. The massive cigar boom, you could sell anything that was a stick of tobacco if it worked or not. You can find, I remember I was in Cuba in '99. You couldn't find anything. I think I found one box of Hoyo de Gourmets in the entire island. So, but 2003, the cigar boom, the first cigar boom had sort of peaked and was tailing off. But that was when the brand really became a brand, I think.
Correct, yes. I mean, the brand was there, but we knew that the consumers needed something else. For example, we knew that Edward wanted something smaller because it is to call the fundadores. So, so we said it's necessary to have an extension of the range.
You're amazing. You invented everything for everybody. It's fantastic.
We have to have different sizes in order to reach more consumers. And after 5 years of the brand being in the market, we decided to extend the brand with 3 new sizes, and that was taking place here in London, which is, I think, part of that history of the brand also.
And what I mean, you obviously like London so much, you made it your home. What is it about Cuban cigars and London that it makes it so special, that why the first world Habanos, the Habanos World Days is held here?
Well, that is maybe for Habanos to answer, but I know that London is a special city. Always London has kept in the heart the cigars, and particular Habanos, and for years the tradition of aging cigars, the tradition of keeping the cigar for a while have been in London. In here started the vintage and all these ideas that now coming across, and we always had in London a specialist that really knew and loved the cigar. And today is the same. I mean, the city is plenty of special places where you can enjoy cigars, and I think when Habanos decided for this Habanos World Day, immediately thought about
The only choice. The only choice. And you forgot to mention the beautiful weather as well.
Well, the nice weather that we have, you can see, especially in London. Yes.
Anyway, Max, you talking of Fidel Castro, you were one of the first owners of a box signed by Fidel, weren't you?
Yeah, you know, I also was one of the lucky people to be in the dinner of the century.
Yes.
And I tried in the auction to buy it, but obviously I couldn't get the prices that they were going. He did, but many other people did. But a year later, in September 15 of 1995, there was the first auction in Cuba, in the Hotel Meliá Coiba, and there was a dinner we were like 200 people, and they had cigars signed by Fidel, and there were 4 lots.
Yes.
And I was sitting in the table before the auction with the guy who used to be the CFO of Cuba Tobacco.
Okay.
And I told him that I had been in the dinner of the century, and I tried to buy a box signed by the Comandante. And he told me, listen, if you want to buy one, today might be your chance, because we never know if he would sign again any boxes.
Okay.
So it might be your chance today. So I didn't enjoy the dinner. I was with butterflies in my stomach trying to see one more, because I really want a box. So the funny thing is that the auctioneer that they assigned was Jose Maria Cases, who's been the distributor of Cuba for many years before I was in the business. And he told me, you know, I've never been an auctioneer, I don't know how this works, or I don't know what to do. So I said, it's good for me. so the first lot was a box of, it was an 150th anniversary of Partagás, 25 cigars, double Robustos, beautiful box. And he says, okay, I'm going to start the bidding, and I'm gonna go from $100 to $100. So the box started at $700,
Yes.
so $800, $900, $1,000, $1,200, $1,300. And so I got to $7,500,
Yes.
and there were no other bids, so I mean $7,500, and I got it, and it's signed by Fidel, so it was incredible. The first lot, the second lot, already people were already ordered or having drinks and all that, so people went higher. The second box went up for $25,000, and the next one went for like $75,000. So I always say it's good to buy the first lot because people are still are really nervous about it. So
That shows how much things have changed. That's probably the price of a Siglo 6 now, isn't it?
probably.
But also, and you're known as a great collector of Havana cigars.
Yeah, well, since I started smoking, I've been a collector. I became a collector, and I've tried to go. At that time, there was no festival of Habanos. This dinner that I tell you at the Coiba, they didn't exist at Habanos festival. It was the first dinner made in Cuba with an auction. So then came the Festival del Habano.
Yes.
And then I always tried to see if I could buy some of the cigars that were in auction. Sometimes I was the winner, and many times I couldn't do it. But since then I've been
what's
collecting.
so exciting about collectors for the Trinidad? What makes that such an attractive thing to collect?
Well, it's not only the Trinidad, it's in general every cigar, but the Trinidad, after the dinner of the century,
Yes.
everybody was asking about Trinidad. So I have told Padron, listen, you have to try to make the Trinidad for the public. Everybody reads about it. It's for presence of the Comandante to Prime Ministers, kings, etc. You have to try to do it. And he said, we're gonna see. Then he left Cuba Tobacco at the time, and Mr. Linares came as a president of Habanos then. And he didn't travel much, because as she said, he was the Minister of Labor, and then he came to Habanos. And one of the first trips he did was to Mexico, to see this Casa del Habano that we got made in Mexico. And we had a dinner for him, and everybody in the dinner was, please, Trinidad. Yeah, everybody was young, so when so many people asked me for something, he probably put it in his mind, we should really try to do something. He said, no, but we can't right now. And like 2 years later, one day he gave me a call. He said, Max, I have very good news for you. The first 2,000 boxes of the batch of the first Trinidad Fundadores are going to go to Mexico.
The Trinidad.
So the Trinidad, the Fundadores, yeah. So we were very lucky to have them, and people really loved it. And ever since, Trinidad has been one of the. It's not a cigar that you smoke every day. I think it's a very elegant cigar. It's like a velvety cigar, but in special occasions, I think it's great, and it has had a very big acceptance in Mexico.
And do you think that in general, the thinner cigars are going to make a comeback as a result of this focus on Trinidad now?
Well, I personally like thick cigars. I mean, my favorite cigar was the Partagatos Italian box of 50s.
Yes.
That's what I always smoke and smoke still today. But Trinidad, from time to time, it's a pleasure to smoke a Trinidad.
And why is there so much excitement and passion around Trinidad, do you think?
First, because the brand. First, because it was only done for presence of the Comandante. So, everybody wants to get what nobody else can get. So that created already in the market that everybody wants waiting. So once it came, and the thing that the cigar is so good, is that people said, let's try this new 38 ring that then came to be 40 when it got to us, and people just like it because it's a great flavor.
What did you think was different? This is really interesting as a very seasoned cigar smoker. What was different for you between the 38 and the 40 ring gauge?
Well, in general, there's nothing, but if you put in your hand a 38, I like when I take my cigars and I play with them, I'm turning them around, and it seems that 2 millimeters is nothing, but if you take a 38 and you take a 40, it's incredible what a difference you feel in your hands when you have it, so it gives a pleasure.
Which do you prefer of the two?
The 40.
Okay.
Yeah. But for the 38, I just had one. In the dinner of the century. I never had a chance to get it. I was not a friend of the diplomat.
Edward Sahakian shop is open all hours, and you can look at old magazines, see him cornering the market in Trinidad, all the rest of it. But when did you hear of Trinidad first?
It was heard probably through Marvin in the magazine, because you heard that it was only for diplomatic presence, and nobody could get it, and nobody could see them or anything. So it was, I think, after the dinner,
Well,
when
there were rumors as retailers we used to hear that there is a cigar that special visitors, heads of states, when they go to Havana, Castro presents them with a special cigar. It's a slim, long cigar. That's all we had heard, but it was all rumors. We actually never seen any until I'll tell you later.
Do you know how he got dispensation to use them, Marvin?
How he
How he got dispensation to present them at dinner?
Well, I think he spoke to Habanos. It was Senor Padron, and he talked to him. Said, "We have something very special, a special dinner." And Padron, he was very much in favor of having a very special event outside of Havana in Europe. And he said, "But I need some special cigars for the auction there." And that's when the cigars were actually. Would you like to see a photograph of it?
Yes, of course.
Because here we are. There was a whole lot of.
There you are, you can see that.
There was a stack of cigars, boxes of 50, mainly. If you are all interested, I'll quickly.
What price is that?
This is the copy of the actual auction list.
So what did the Trinidad's go for?
The Trinidad, the first lot was a chest of 50 Trinidad Cuba Tobacco's most exclusive cigar. That was a description of a 38 ring gauge, and it went for an incredible price of $8,000 US dollars. Second lot was a chest of 50 Cohiba Pyramides. It went to 12,000. The lot after that was a chest of 50 Cohiba Grand Coronas, that's the A size. That went for 20,000. And then we had a chest of lot number 5 was 50 Trinidads again, which jumped from 8,000 to $18,000.
That's why I tell you, you have to buy the first one.
Exactly. I was fortunate. I got lot number 7, which was a chest of 50 of the Cohiba Grand Coronas, the A size, and that was merely $19,000 US dollars. At the time, it was a lot of money. I bought a car instead, but I decided to buy these cigars. But the last lot was interesting. It was called the King's Ransom. And it was a combination of 100 Trinidads, 100 Cohiba Pyramides, and 100 Cohiba Grand Coronas, all packed in chests of 50, and that went for $200,000.
Wow. Time to have change. Times have changed. Now, I want to talk to Miguel, but I can't. I have to talk through an interlocutor, an intermediary, because my Spanish is abysmal. But I just wanted to know, because this is, we've heard about the excitement that was around the brand before it really was a brand in the very early days. In 2003, it underwent a great change, and you had to move production. You said that Laguito was too small a factory to produce what you required. How many cigars were being made in the El Laguito days? How many Trinidad were being made a year?
El Laguito producía en aquella época alrededor de 2 millones de tabaco. Es lo que producía el Laguito en aquel.
What's that, Anna?
At the time, the Laguito factory only used to produce around 2 million units.
Oh, and how much of everything, and how much of Trinidad?
¿Cuánto era de Trinidad en particular lo que se producía en aquel momento que era fundador solamente?
Alrededor de 300,000
Around 300,000 was the production of fundadores.
Because that was sort of to around about 2002, okay?
Exactly, before the launch of the new sizes, the production in the Laguito factory was around 2 million cigars, including Trinidad Fundadores that was only around 300,000.
So, who took the decision, Miguel, to move to the factory in Pinar del Rio, and why was Pinar del Rio chosen as opposed to one of the big Havana factories?
En el año, a inicio del 2003, recuerdo, yo era el subdirector técnico productivo de la fábrica Churma y participábamos en los consejos de dirección que se daba por la dirección de industria, en aquel momento Fernando López, que era el director de la.
But at the time in 2003, at the beginning of 2003, he was the deputy director at the H. Goodman factory,
yes.
the factory that used to produce H. Goodman and Monte Cristo. And he used to be part of the meeting of all the directors of the industry where different decisions were taken. The head of the production at the time for the old Cuban cigar was the late Fernando Lopez. And he remembered that time when that was discussed.
Recuerdo cuando se tomó la decisión de pasarla a Pinar del Río, especialmente a la Francisco Donatien, que en su momento era una fábrica pequeña, pero iba ya en ascenso con el nivel de torcedores que tenía. Producía solamente la marca Vegueros y era una fábrica que estaba ya en condiciones de asumir otras producciones, y de ahí que se tome la decisión de pasar Trinidad con los nuevos formatos de Robusto Extra, Coloniales
What's that then?
So
y Reyes.
he remembered at the time that the discussion took place, that when it was discussed which factory will be the right factory to move the production, the decision was to go to the Pinar del Río factory. At the time, the factory, Francisco Donatien, used to produce only very small brand, that was Vegueros.
Caballero.
Vegueros.
Veguero, my favorite.
Veguero.
Everybody's favorite in this one. We all love a good Veguero.
The-
As long as somebody else is smoking it, I think.
Well, it's a really nice size.
I know, you're a great lover. You almost convinced me.
Really nice brand also, and very affordable for
I
every,
think that's
for
because
every
it's Habanos
day.
World Days, we go back to the Veguero.
The next Habanos World Day maybe will be Vegueros. But anyway, at the time, that was a very small factory, and they thought that was the right decision to take this small factory to produce so important brand like Trinidad.
But it wasn't, you weren't, it was, to say that you transferred the production to this small factory is not, it wasn't as simple as that, because you had to send rollers in to train the team already there.
Pero eso no fue tan simple. ¿Cómo se logró eso? Tuvo que dejar otro sector.
Sí, era una fábrica que los torcedores no confeccionaban los tabacos con pigtail, apéndice, con pigtail como se le llama. Entonces hubo de la fábrica del Laguito colaborar con maestros torcedores a enseñar a los torcedores de Pinar del Río en la habilidad.
Yes, the factory, Francisco Donatien, was a factory that produced sizes that were not the sizes that in this case Trinidad had, particularly the pigtail, something which was totally different. So it was necessary to bring cigar rollers from the Laguito factory to train the cigar rollers in Pinar del Rio, and was a collaboration between the two factories in order to have ready the cigar rollers
So
to be
between
able to
Laguito
produce.
and Pinar del Rio.
Yes, they bring people from the Laguito to train the cigar rollers.
And how difficult, I mean, because Miguel started as a cigar roller, so he can say how difficult what are the difficulties of making what I suppose was an unusual cigar with pigtail and all that.
Realmente sabe, puede explicar por qué es tan difícil hacer el pigtail o por qué es diferente de un tabaco.
Los torcedores cuando se forman con la cabeza montada y con el gorro. Hacer el pigtail no es tan complicado, no solamente tener destreza. Una vez que se aprende y tener la destreza, se puede hacer sin ningún tipo de complicación, pero hay alguien que debe enseñar cómo hacerlo en el inicio.
Yes, to make a pigtail is not so difficult, but the cigar roller, when they learn how to roll a cigar, they learn to do it in a straight format. So to produce something with pigtail means certain ability, certain skills. And once they learn that, it will be easy because it's not difficult to produce that. But they need to learn how to do it because usually it's not the way that the cigars are produced.
And how many rollers now, I mean, how many rollers were working on Trinidad in El Laguito, and how many workers are there now in Pinar del Rio? Rollers.
¿Cuántos torcedores tenía antes la institución de Trinidad? ¿Cuántos ahora torcedores hay en la fábrica de Pinar del Río haciendo?
Bueno, en aquel momento en el Laguito había alrededor de 8 a 10 torcedores que hacían el Trinidad fundador. Hoy en Pinar del Río, con 3 fábricas que hay, que es la Francisco Donatien, Juan Casa Nueva y Paulina Pedroso son alrededor de 200 toceros.
So when Trinidad started at the Laguito factory, only 8 cigar rollers used to produce the fundadores.
And-
One of the cigar rollers that at the time was there is Juana, who we have here today at the exhibition, and you can probably see her demonstrations when you go for the coffee break. So only
Only eight
eight cigar rollers used to produce fundadores at the Laguito.
Okay,
Today-
was that the commercial fundadores?
The commercial fundadores.
Eight rollers, just.
Eight cigar
Now you've
rollers.
got 3 factories in.
But today, in Pinar del Rio, the factory is called the Enterprise. Pinar del Rio is compound of 3 different factories.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just one factory or just one enterprise, but it's 3 different factories that all together produce the Trinidad. And
Are they
currently,
only Trinidad? Is it all the?
only Trinidad, and this, together among them is 200 cigar rollers produced in Trinidad.
Okay. And that's just Trinidad. They don't run anything else.
¿Esos toceadores producen solamente en Trinidad o no producen nada más?
A ver, la fábrica Pinar del Río cuenta, es decir, las 3 fábricas cuentan alrededor de 300 torcedores. Hoy Pinar del Río, además de Trinidad, confecciona también Vega Robaina, que es la otra de lo que es Casa Matriz.
In total, the factories, Pinar del Rio factory has 300 cigar rollers, but Trinidad is 200.
Okay. Now these are
Because
different.
another brand said that produce Pinar del Rio also is Vegas Robaina.
And are these at different locations around the.
Exactly, there's 3 different locations. The same factory is ubicated in 3 different locations.
And what was the production then in the beginning in 2003, and what is the production now?
State secret, maybe?
Of internet?
De Trinidad es alrededor de 3,5 millones a 4 millones de Trinidad en el año.
I mean,
So, that is a secret. I don't want to.
well, these people have paid good money to find
No, I
out.
cannot, because I have there people from Habanos that they say we cannot say figures and sort of thing, but
Well, you can share it here. This is
Well-
Thanos World Days.
please don't say it to anybody, don't say
Don't
to
tell anybody. How much was it, Anna?
The total production today of Trinidad, it doesn't go for the 4 million. It's not above that. We cannot say how many, but it's not above 4 million.
You heard it here first. Well, I mean, I've got to say, after that hammer blow, I'm quite, I don't know what to say next. So I think I'll talk to Emilio, because he's one of my great heroes of the cigar industry. No, he is. He's a great man. He's a great man. He saw off the CIA with their blue mold and black. Whatever. It's true. It's true. But also as an expert on the behaviour of tobacco after it's been harvested, you say that Trinidad ages very well. I know it's been chosen as the launch vehicle for this new vintage age program, but what makes Trinidad so good at aging?
Ok, primero quisiera hacer una breve introducción. A partir de 1979 reaparece el moho azul en Cuba.
So he's going to make a very brief introduction. He started in 1979, so it's very brief. By 1979, started the blue mold in Cuba. Was the first time that they found.
And it was devastating, wasn't it? I mean, it was genuinely devastating. How much of the crop did it wipe out?
¿Eh? En la cosecha 79-80, el moho azul produjo el 95% de pérdida de nuestras plantaciones de tabaco.
In the harvest in 1979 to 1980, due to the blue mold, the 95% of the harvest was lost.
So you're looking here at the savior of the Cuban cigar industry.
Están viendo aquí esa palabra del tabaco.
Daba deseo de llorar pasar por la zona tabacalera y ver prácticamente quemada la plantación.
The people really almost crying, and particularly when he goes through the countryside and can see that the whole plantation were destroyed. That was really something that to cry, something really very difficult.
Y esto fue así porque las variedades tradicionales cubanas, corojo, criollo y pelo de oro, resultaron altamente susceptibles a esta enfermedad.
And the reason of that was the varieties of black Cuban tobacco at the time, corojo, criollo, and pelo de oro, were highly sensitive to the blue mold.
A partir de ese momento constituyó para el Instituto de Investigaciones del Tabaco un verdadero reto obtener nuevas variedades que preservaran la calidad organoléptica de las variedades tradicionales y que fueran además resistentes al moho azul y otras enfermedades importantes como el Black Shang y el Weather Flake.
So, for that moment was really a challenge for the Research Institute of Tobacco in Cuba to find varieties able to face and to be able to be resistant to this sort of illness for the tobacco, and at the same time to keep the organoleptic characteristics of the Cuban tobacco. So that was a real challenge.
Por ello, a partir de 1981, comenzamos un programa de mejoramiento genético encaminado a obtener esas nuevas variedades que siguieran siendo representativas del tabaco negro cubano y que permitieran su cultivo por la resistencia al moho azul.
So that was the challenge, to find these varieties, be able to find those varieties that are able to be resistant to those illnesses.
Esto se dice muy fácilmente, pero lograrlo no fue tan fácil.
It's easy to say, more difficult to be able to find this and to have a result.
Fue en 1994
Only in 1994 it was possible.
que logramos obtener dos nuevas variedades, el Habana 92 y el Habana 2000.
So in 1994 was the time that two varieties, Havana 92 and Havana 2000, were able to have all these characteristics. I mean, to be resistant to the blue mold and at the same time to preserve the organoleptic characteristics of the Cuban black tobacco.
Para que se tenga una idea de lo difícil que resultó crear estas variedades, no solo por la resistencia, sino porque preservaran la calidad organoléptica de nuestro tabaco. Quiero decirles que llegamos a obtener un poco más de 100 nuevas variedades y solo estas dos pasaron todos los filtros de la comisión de degustación y fueron las primeras variedades comerciales que salvaron, hay que decirlo así, el cultivo del tabaco.
Just to have an idea how long that the work was, during that research, around 100 different varieties were tested, and only these two were able to pass all filters through the organoleptic commission of the Cuban Tobacco Institute that made possible today to have real Cuban cigar, because these two varieties saved the industry.
And I just wanted to know, when it comes to making Trinidad, are there special processes and ways of treating the tobacco?
Cuando vamos a hablar de Trinidad en particular, tiene un proceso diferente el añejamiento, el tratamiento de la materia prima.
No, con ello quería destacar que las nuevas variedades responden plenamente a la calidad organoléptica de nuestro tabaco y que por tanto el proceso de fermentación, de añejamiento que tienen se debe a las nuevas variedades, al suelo donde las cultivamos y con la fitotecnia en general, la técnica en general que empleamos en su cultivo.
So the secret of aging of any Cuban cigar, of any Habanos, the secret behind that, and that is for all the brands, is three things. First, the soil. That is something important for the Cuban tobacco. Secondly, these varieties that are able to keep the organoleptic characteristic of the Cuban tobacco. And the third, and not less important, is also all the traditional different tasks that are taking place during the process of curing, fermentation, and aging. That is part of that secret that the Cuban tobacco industry has.
But you made some very interesting things, I think, about the curing process of the tobacco in general.
O sea, ¿qué es lo que hay especialmente en la elaboración?
La diferencia que puede haber entre una marca y otra, incluyendo Trinidad, se debe a la ligada. Es fundamental, y esto prácticamente es el know-how de nuestro tabaco. Pero el tabaco original es el mismo, son las mismas variedades. O sea, es la ligada la que determina una característica u otra.
So the difference is that the reason is general for all, is valid for all Cuban cigars, I mean for all Habanos. Behind that is the same process, but the secret is in the blend. Everyone has different blend, and because of that has different characteristics.
La diferencia en cuanto a la fermentación y el añejamiento sí puede establecer las ediciones especiales. O sea, el proceso de fermentación del tabaco y añejamiento básico es el mismo.
Yeah. The basic process of curing, fermentation, and aging is the same for all cigars. However, when it's necessary to produce a special edition or a special production is when we do different process, and that is the know-how.
O sea, todo el tabaco cubano es susceptible de admitir una larga fermentación, un largo añejamiento, pero si se quiere algo más especial, bueno, pues esa fermentación y añejamiento básico se altera, se prolonga para lograr un acentuamiento mayor de las características organolépticas.
So all Habanos have the basic in order to be able to age very well. In general, all
So everything is,
but
but Trinidad is more brilliant than the other.
no, but he said that when we want, what the Cuban industry want to do something different is when they make some changes, and based on that is when you obtain different results. But all Cuban cigars, all Habanos, are able to age well without any problem, because behind that, the secret is the soil, the varieties, and the process in general. That is valid for all the brands. But in particular, one brand or another one, the difference is because of the blend.
And there's a lot of Seco in the blend, isn't there, at Trinidad?
Y hay mucho seco en la marca en la
Eso es una diferencia con el resto de las marcas. En el caso del Trinidad hay un mayor % del tiempo seco, que es el que aporta fundamentalmente el aroma. Eso diferencia el Trinidad en general de otras marcas.
Yeah, Trinidad is different regarding other brands because the proportion of seco that is used in the blend, that was the secret that Mr. Raúl Valladares. And by the way, today is the birthday of Mr. Valladares. So we are here celebrating Valladares'
Ahora, cuando se quiera hacer una edición especial, bueno, pues se puede prolongar, en el caso de la trica y el capote, el proceso de añejamiento. Y en el caso de la capa, se usa una capa llamada mulata, que se le da un proceso de fermentación mucho más prolongado. Pero lo puede resistir cualquier materia prima de los habanos.
Okay, when we are talking about a special edition, like for example the limited edition, in these cases is different the process of fermentation and aging, and particular the wrapper that is used for the limited edition, which we call Maduro or Mulata wrapper, that is the process of fermentation and aging is totally different regarding a standard fermentation process or aging for a standard product.
And I just wanted to ask one more question, if I may. We've heard about the tobacco being all the same and just being treated, the differences coming from the blend. What are the things that unite all the Cuban cigars? How can you tell it's a Havana cigar when you set fire to it and put it in your mouth? Is there something that it distinguishes it from all other regions?
Dice que otra cosa hay en el tabaco cubano que lo hace diferente, además que te lo pones en la boca, que es lo que lo hace distinto.
Hay 4 grandes factores: suelo, clima, variedad y hombre.
So the 4 main important factors that make the Habano cigar different to the rest of the cigar from other origin is 4 factors. You would say the climate, the soil, the varieties, and the men that work every day and make this possible.
El hombre no solo como productor agrícola, sino también como obrero en la fase preindustrial y en la fase industrial.
And we were talking about all those men and women, of course, that work not only in the countryside and make possible the agriculture, but all the curing process, the fermentation, and also in the factories that make this cigar possible to have these different characteristics.
Cuando falta uno de estos 4 factores, no hay habano.
When any of these factors miss, you will not have Habano.
Well, this is brilliant. I mean, he's a legend, this man. So thank you. That was fantastic.
Gracias.
No, really one of the great heroes of the Cuban industry. Rodrigo, you've got the unenviable task of following up on that. It's a hard act to follow. But you're responsible for Trinidad and the way it's perceived, yes?
We are responsible, talking as a team, for the 27 brands of Habanos.
Because it's faced certain challenges over the 55 years, hasn't it? It's not sort of an identity crisis, but there's this thing where you've had cigars launched and then suddenly discontinued, and the Robusto Extra was a lovely cigar. That was it's counterintuitive, really. That often I find that when a great cigar is a great cigar, it's often discontinued shortly thereafter, which I don't understand that. But how have you determined the characteristics now of Trinidad and what is a good size and where the brand is positioned? So if you could just address the first of all the thing about the cigars being withdrawn, and then how you're dealing with the brand now.
Okay, so it's a long story because I should start by 2003.
Yeah.
Okay, so when the launch of the regular portfolio of Trinidad was made, so we told us that we're like kind of standards, okay, because we're similar to Siglo 1, Siglo 2, Robustos Extra could be said that it was similar to Cañonazo. So at the beginning was a kind of many similarities with Cohiba.
Yeah.
That then we had a colección, first Limitada was a Cervantes as well, so it was a classic standard as well. Then we had the Robustos D with the pigtail, of course.
That was a great
brand. So there was a Robusto as well. So they were like kind of classic formats, right? That was 2003. And yeah, the brand had some price repositioning, maybe too early.
Yes.
Because you need to build on equity, let's say. And from, that was 2010 to 2014, it was made a brand reclassification, in general, not only for Trinidad, but for the whole portfolio of brands. And Trinidad was, since then, what we call a high-value brand. So we changed the strategy.
I'm interested how you do that, because it started at a very high level. It started arguably higher level than Cohiba.
Yeah, but it's always been like below Cohiba. So it's always.
Before it existed in the public domain, it was seen as almost more rare and exclusive than Cohiba.
Yeah, let me elaborate on this, because this is amazing as a brand later. But the change was in 2014 when the brand was reclassified, the price reposition, and the strategy was going from a niche brand only sold in some specific retail, change the distribution to a broader.
And then you dropped the price as well.
adjusted the price as well.
Adjusted the price. I like that. Yes, much better.
Try to rebuild equity and also launching a new portfolio. You have, mid dollars with wider sectors, wider green goatees. Okay, so we have BTL starting with 54, then you have Topes as a 56. So we were trying to get Trinidad or to approach Trinidad to a broader type of consumer, asking for the same blend, same experience, but with a bigger smoke, if I can say that. And since that, the brand portfolio was bigger. 2019 was amazing, the 50th anniversary of the brand. Since then, we can say that in the last 10, 12 years, the brand has grown.
It's been much more consistent in its. You kind of, there was a time when you didn't really know what you were going to get with the Trinidad, but I think in the last 10 years you come back to sort of slightly more slimmer engages. I mean the Cabildos is what, 46?
36.
So is that a sort of return? Is it a brand for the slimmer ring gauge, or is it?
This year, with the 50th anniversary, we've gone to more classic dollars because we need to. We wanted to celebrate the 50th anniversary with the iconic Fundadores, which makes sense, and also with Cabildos, which is a classic. It's 46.
Because that's brilliant. I mean, it's kind of a brave decision because the people would expect something over 50. So why did
we take? I mean, at the very beginning, the strategy was like similar to Coiba, but we had to go its own way. Let's say, and it's a boutique brand. It's a very special brand, and as a brand, talking as a marketing guy, it's amazing how the brand is. It's how I mentioned before. It's Rolls Royce of cigars. Max Goodman as well. The brand has everything, but it's true. It's not only a premium tobacco brand, but it's a premium brand in general, luxury brand. You've got everything. You've got the mystery. You got this iconic design, which is amazing. Made in Cuba 25 years ago. It's amazing. This pattern that looks like luxury good. So it's amazing. And also the Vitolas are not many, so you always have a small quantities to create that appetite in consumers. So it's like amazing. For me, for example, this if you plan a brand strategy, if you from scratch, you want to create a mystery, it's difficult. But here it's amazing what Anna said. When we started working with the brand existed from 25 years.
Yes.
So
but it was also
mystery was banned.
It was also a launch as well, wasn't it? I mean, it was a very. It's unique in the world, I think. If you were I can't think of a product that existed in secret for a quarter of a century.
That helped it to create all this, mysterious mystery around the brand and this appetite for consumers.
And
also
you find as a marketing expert that the flavour profile and the aroma and it being quite accessible, is it appealing to kind of new type of smoker?
The blend is elegant as the brand is. So this is that match perfectly. And also, because of the quality of the raw tobacco, because of the using of the seco to bring more aroma to the experience. Also, it's the sizes you can find, and some small details. The boxes. You have these 12 boxes, 12 unit boxes. This horizontal display, which is a small detail that makes the brand in general unique.
And why was it chosen as the brand to premiere this new vintage program that's coming out of Cuba? This, as opposed to aged tobacco, aged finished cigars. We've got the first batch coming over now. It's minimum 10 years old. Why Trinidad for that?
Because it was an excellent opportunity. Habanos has a program of aging cigars. We wanted to celebrate, to have tribute to the brand with its first Vitola, and also with a limited edition with Cabildos, and that was a perfect mix, going to the origin of the brand, but mixed as well with an innovative humidor, which is very Trinidad, let me say, kind of exclusive, mixing the heritage, the elegance of the size, and also this trunk humidors, reinventing this classic case and using the amazing design that the brand has.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. That's very insightful. Kirby Allison, you're wearing your stroller today. It's a semi-morning coat. You look as though you're going to a bank in about 1938.
A funeral.
No, a bank. I see you more as going to the stock exchange in about 1938.
Doing my best undertaker.
No, you do undertake a look very well. He was actually once, he's very popular on the internet, Kirby Allison, and one of his followers once said that he looked like an undertaker, wasn't it?
That's right.
Yes.
And that I should reach out to Nick Fouts for
Yeah, that's-
advice on how to do that.
Someone asked that, anyway. We won't go there, we'll talk about Trinidad instead, I think. You paid your first visit to Havana just over a year ago, is that right?
That's correct.
And how did it strike you? First of all, coming from America, there's a sense of it being the sort of forbidden fruit. And then there also, but you fell in love with the country and you fell in love with the cigars, didn't you?
Absolutely. I mean, as an American, there's a perceived impossibility of traveling to Cuba, and so in some ways, I think that I would have loved to have traveled there sooner because I've always been such a lover of Cuban cigars. But the opportunity arose in 2003 at the invitation of Hunters and Crown County to go to the festival. Edward and Eddie were there. It's something that we had been speaking about for a long time. So in many ways, it was truly a dream come true. And I think for me, what struck me on my first trip to Havana was the opportunity to really fall in love with the Cuban people. I think that that's so much a part of the story of Cuban tobacco.
Well, that's what Emilio was saying, yeah.
And until you've traveled to Cuba and been able to smoke a cigar in Havana, visit the factory and see the people who really pour their lives and passion into these cigars, it's impossible to fully appreciate these cigars for just how exceptional they are.
You might say it's quality, tradition, and craft.
Quality craftsmanship at its finest.
Quality craftsmanship, which comes first, the traditional, is the tradition last?
The craft, tradition is last.
Okay, that's very...
Arguably the most important though.
Arguably. You're always leaving room for debate, which is good. How much did you know about Trinidad when you first, last year, when you landed in Havana? How much did you know about Trinidad?
Trinidad was a brand that that I knew about, that I enjoyed smoking. The Fundadores has always been a favorite of mine. Difficult to come by.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I'd say that, someone that, relative to the people in this room, really have just now really kind of getting into my journey of true appreciation and connoisseurship for tobacco. I didn't know much about Trinidad, to be completely honest.
Because I think that's really what Rodrigo was saying. It's speaking to a new audience, and I suppose you're that new audience. And you went through this amazing journey just over the course of a year. So how have your feelings towards the brand changed since you embarked upon this? The project I'm talking about is this amazing documentary he's made. It really is. The production values are off the charts. The CGI, the car chases, the explosions, and the bit where you go into space.
Yes, that's right. Yes,
Yes, that's all great. Yes, some of the language is a bit strong there, but it's well worth watching. It's incredibly instructive. If you haven't seen it already, I urge you to get onto the internet right now on your mobile telephones and start viewing Kirby's wonderful documentaries. But how did this odyssey change your feelings?
Really, I think for anyone that doesn't know about Trinidad, the opportunity to, dive into this story really was incredible. There's so much mystique surrounding the brand, and I think that has left certainly, the mystery, but in that mystery, certain gaps of understanding and knowledge of its origin, and really its story itself. And so to be able to travel to Trinidad with Anna and Gemma, to meet with the city historian and learn of the significance of the city, not just to the brand, but more importantly, to the country of Cuba, I think really put into perspective just how important and special of a brand, even amongst all the Havana's brands, Trinidad was intended to be. It's really this incredible story of really capturing everything that's great about Cuba, its people and its history, into this icon. That was designed specifically to really transmit that to the world.
Yes, it's a gift, yeah.
And I think that one of the things I was really struck by is just I don't know if intentionality is the right word with which, you know, the brand of Trinidad was constructed. You know, I think it was such a product of love in the hearts of the people that were involved that it just somehow all came together. I mean, Trinidad being this incredible city, it's where it's one of the most well-preserved colonial cities in all of the Caribbean.
UNESCO heritage.
UNESCO World Heritage Site, but it's also where, you know, the Spanish, you know, the native Cubans, and you know, the Africans all combined to really give rise to the modern Cuban culture that we know it. So not only is the city historically significant, but culturally, in many ways, was kind of the genesis of what ultimately became the modern Cuba that we know today.
We know and love today.
That's right.
What about the name Cabildos is particular to Trinidad, isn't it? I mean, you have. I mean, I've never been privileged enough by. I mean, I've been around cigars for only 30 or so years. I've never been privileged enough to visit this.
It's a real bone-rattling journey.
Yes. Well, I mean, I haven't undertaken it, but I take your word for it. But what is the Cabildos? What is a Cabildos? The historian elaborates on this at great length. But can you give us the sort of top line?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things that, again, I think is really unique to Trinidad is that every single name of the Vitolas has a particular significance to the name or the city of Trinidad. And so Cabildos, you know, was one of the original kind of social structures in which people came together, they met, and it was one of the early forms of government in some ways, these councils. And so, you know, I think it's an incredible metaphor for cigars and their ability to bring people together, to cross divides. I mean, you know, I've never met someone that enjoys a Habano cigar that isn't someone that you can get along with, that shares your same values and interests. And, you know, Trinidad, you know, originally being this diplomatic, you know, gift, this diplomatic tool, you know, in some ways evokes that original idea of the Cabildos.
And tell me about some of the adventures you had while making this series.
Well, there were plenty of adventures. You know, calling in the military police to stop traffic in Trinidad so that we could film, you know, the introduction to the factory. Being in, you know, Trinidad, a city with Anna and Gemma, and you know, having no place to film this interview and something coming up at the last minute that was absolutely spectacular. You know, the work that was required to fly a drone in Trinidad, again requiring approval at the highest levels, and in Cuba. I mean, every element of the way, you know, doors opened and allowed us this incredible access. I still think of the interview with Juan Aguilera, you know, sitting there in front of El Aguito. I mean, again, we needed approval from the military palace across the street, even to have our cameras outside, and we had security surrounding us the entire time. But to sit there, you know, at the birthplace of Trinidad, where it was rolled in front of what for a long time was a house that people couldn't enter because of its exclusivity. And I think one of the most iconic, the most iconic and prestigious of all the Cuban factories. To be able to sit there on a beautiful day with one of the original rollers of Trinidad and to hear her story of how she, you know, first was told by her father that she was going to go roll cigars, really was one of those moments that was, you know, almost surreal.
Yeah, I mean, it's just historic, really. I mean, you're making history as well as taking part in it. What would the top 3 takeaways from your films be? I mean, you should all watch every minute, but if you don't have the necessary time, what are the highlights for you? What are the 3 things that you should take away from these films?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that captures me about Cuban tobacco and Habanos, you have this small island in the middle of the Caribbean that through its tobacco, through its cigars, is really known in every corner of the earth. There really is no peer to Cuban tobacco. There's other people that have tried. You know, French wine is certainly a famous, but there's other countries that make great French wine. But there's no country that really comes close to what Cuba is able to produce in their cigars.
And able to produce under difficult circumstances.
Well, I think the difficult circumstances in some ways is what has allowed the preservation of that essence, you know, through constraint has been focused. And you see that in Trinidad. I mean, the selection of Pinar de Rio, Francesca Donatien, again, may have been out of necessity, but in looking back, it is in many ways the perfect location, to have Trinidad cigars rolled. It's not at a gigafactory in Havana,
Where it
with
could be
several hundred
other
rollers.
brands, yeah.
It is, set off by itself in the heart of Pinar del Rio, which is the region producing the finest tobacco in the world. And I think that, again, when you look at the importance of the people and how they contribute so much of their heart and their passion into these cigars, having the rollers living in Pinar del Rio, outside of Havana, amidst the tobacco that is ultimately producing these things we love so much, I think is really poetic.
Yeah, so I mean, you've got in a way a specified region of production, and you've got people dedicated only to Trinidad and doing that.
Yeah. I mean, at Francesca Donatini, we have 30 rollers, of which 2/3 are the highest level 9 category. I mean, there's an incredible focus on this brand that has allowed it to maintain its purity.
I think it's regained a lot of, in the last, as I was saying, a lot of its charisma and prestige.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the charisma and the prestige was always there, but I think in the expansion of the brands, the introduction of the limited editions and the regionals, I think the attention or the eye of the collector and connoisseur was drawn away from Trinidad. I think one of the things that we had the opportunity to do through this video and this documentary was to really draw that story back out and present it in a way it always had existed, but maybe it just hadn't been told, to the kind of the modern.
And you're dressed in such a modern way.
Yes. Well,
If you're thinking of 1938. Gemma, is that enough, or do you want more?
I think that's absolutely perfect.
Fine, these people want to get to the loo, have a coffee, have a cigar. Do you want to say anything else, Anna?
No, if they want to make any questions.
Oh yeah, questions. No questions. Good. Okay, off you go.
that was without the comma, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to know, because Coiba is very well known because of the raw material selected from the what Cuba calls the 5 Vegas de Primera. And I would like to know if Trinidad has some special zone, special Vegas that are used to produce to select the material, the raw material that's going to be made in Trinidad.
I think that's an answer. Eumelia will answer that.
I'm going to check which one is going to answer. I have to translate her.
Oh, you're having to write a book.
How are you? Okay.
And winter turns to
No,
spring.
insisto, la materia prima en general de los tabacos habanos es la misma para cualquier vitola o marca que se quiera hacer. El secreto está en la ligada. No es que haya vegas específicas para Trinidad, no la hay. Mucho menos como oí decir en estos días de que ese tabaco se produce en Trinidad. Eso es falso, no se produce en Trinidad. El tabaco, la tripa y el capote de los habanos se da solamente en la zona de Vuelta Abajo, ni siquiera en toda la provincia de Pinar del Río, sino en la zona de Vuelta Abajo.
So there is not a special plantation for Trinidad or for any particular brand. The special zone, the special area is Vuelta Abajo, and from that particular area will come all the raw material that is used to produce any Habano. The secret is in the blend, and the blend is what determines one brand or another one. But all Cuban or Habanos are produced using the raw material that comes from Vuelta Abajo, and that is the secret of the Cuban tobacco in general.
La capa se puede producir en Cuba en diferentes lugares. Pinar del Río, La Habana, Ciego de Ávila, Santo Espíritu, no tiene problema, sale buena capa. Pero la tripa y el capote tiene que ser de Vuelta Abajo, de ninguna otra parte de Cuba.
Maybe you can find that the wrapper is not necessarily come from Pinar del Rio. You can find, for example, in the Ilya, the son from Partido, that you have very good rappers also. However, the filler, the binder, has to come from just one song, and this is Vuelta Bajo.
Eddie.
Sorry, Miguel.
No, we got another question.
No, but Miguel want to.
Okay, why not? No, crack on.
Es decir, Eumelio tiene razón en lo que ha planteado, pero una vez que la materia prima, es decir, nosotros tenemos una empresa que era empresa comercializadora en rama, que comercializa todas las ramas, es decir, la encargada de comprarla y llevarla a nuestros almacenes, y la fábrica ir a comprar la materia prima en estos almacenes. Ahora, en el caso de lo que es Coiba, en el caso de lo que es Trinidad, sí, a la hora de comprar, a la hora se busca de la zona de Pinar del Río las mejores vegas que están identificadas, y esa es la que van a la fábrica tanto del Laguito como a Pinar del Río para hacer ambas.
So, Miguel would like to add to the answer that Emilio already explained, that yes, all the raw material used for Habanos come from Vuelta Bajo. However, there are different vegas, different plantations in the area of Vuelta Bajo, and when it comes to the factories that produce brands like Coiba or Trinidad in this case, they have to go to the warehouses where that raw material is kept and is available for the factories. And the factories will buy from those warehouses the raw material that will be used for the particular brand. And in these cases, for Trinidad or Coiba in particular, there are certain areas where that raw material will be kept just for this particular brand.
Eddie, you want to ask a question?
Yes, I have a question about the pigtail that appears on Trinidad. What is the significance of the pigtail? Is it to signify this cigar is particularly special? Does it confer any additional, call it constructive quality or anything else to the cigar? And also a practical question. I have a few clients who insist the pigtail is to be ripped off before smoking the cigar. I've tried to discourage them. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, I'm going to answer something about that because it's just when Trinidad was born with Fundadores, and Fundadores was born at the Laguito factory, which is the factory that usually have produced the sizes with the pigtail. That was a characteristic of the factory. And of course, when we went to develop the brand, the logical thing was to keep that as a characteristic of the brand. And then became that was something really different that made the brand different to the other brand, because this pigtail is only used, as you know, in some sizes of Coiba and in very few sizes of Montecristo, like Montecristo Especial, number 1 and number 2. But in the case of Trinidad, has been kept in all the sizes. So that is a way of also giving certain different characteristics to the brand. And that has been more of the marketing strategy. It's not only because of the physical characteristic, but more to identify and to keep that as part of the presentation of the brand. That is from the marketing point of view. I'm going to ask anyway to Miguel, but I think that's the answer.
And maybe Miguel could also tell us, because he's an expert on this sort of thing, when the pigtail was first introduced as a railing technique. I mean, is it pre-revolutionary? Is it post-revolutionary?
Bueno, en mi conocimiento no lo tengo claro. Sí sé que el pigtail comenzó con Coiba, con la fundación de Coiba, es lo que tengo como conocimiento. No sé si anterior a la revolución existía.
Well, Miguel doesn't know if this pre-revolution we have any side with pigtail. As far as he knows, this started with Coiba.
So it's a relatively recent.
It's relatively recent. From his point of view, it didn't exist pre-revolution. I don't know if any collector in here has anything
Max.
with a pigtail before the revolution.
I don't have any cigar with pigtails that pre-Castro.
Recordemos que comienza el lancero como la fuma, de un torcedor que lo hacía y simplemente para no hacerlo tan complejo, lo hacía en pigtail y esa era su fuma y eso fue lo que se le regaló a Fidel y a partir de ahí ya se institucionalizó.
And the history behind that is the history of Cohiba. Because you have to remember that Cohiba started like that cigar that a cigar roller just made for himself. And that cigar roller produced a cigar that Fidel liked it. And the way of producing that cigar was just for himself to do that pigtail and that presentation. But Fidel loved the cigar. And that came as part of the Cohiba presentation. And from there is the history of the pigtail.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Thank you. I'm really pleased we got that straight. Over there.
So going on to what Eddie just said about the pigtail and the discussion you guys just had.
Why was the 50th anniversary humidor not a pigtail? How comes you made a Pyramides Gloriosos? And in the classic pigtail.
Se produjo sin pigtail y fue la Victoria Gloriosa, que es un torpedo, porque es en verdad en parte de la mano.
Well, it was the first figurado in the band, so it would be good to have a figurado with pigtail, but we started with a figurado.
So are you thinking of bringing other Trinidads without pigtails?
No, that was a one shot, absolutely, with a lovely humidor, by the way. But maybe who knows? In the future we could have a figurado with a pigtail. Who knows?
You never know, so you
Otherwise,
cannot
one
limit
shot,
that.
a very specific vitola no existe blanca, solamente la hornidora.
Just a question here on production. You mentioned earlier that the original cigar, Trinidad cigars were made at Laguito and then they moved to Pinar del Rio with now 3 factories in Pinar del Rio. 2 questions. From a tradition perspective, to maintain tradition, would it have made more sense to have the factories in Santo Espirito produce the cigars instead of Pinar del Rio? And the second question is whether it is expected to maintain the 3 factories in Pinar del Rio going forward. Yeah, given that Santo Espirito is the capital.
Cuando se seleccionó a Pinar del Río, ya lo decía anteriormente, era porque la fábrica Francisco Donatien, que hacía la marca Veguero, venía con, es decir, muy buena calidad, venía con perspectiva de crecimiento, no solamente en esa fábrica, sino en otras fábricas ya que estaban previstas, que son las 2 que también mencioné, y fue la decisión que se tomó en aquel momento. Santi Espíritu, como el resto de las provincias, también confeccionan otros tabacos, otras marcas, pero bueno, se decidió en aquel momento que fuese en Pinar del Río y hoy lo mantenemos en Pinar del Río con muy buena.
The selection of Pinar del Rio at the time that the production was moved from the Laguito to Pinar del Rio, the decision was taken, as he previously explained, based on the fact that that was a very small factory and didn't produce other brands than Vegueros, and that's why they found that was a factory with a very good perspective in order to increase production, but keeping the quality and care that was necessary for that brand. Of course, there are other factories in Santo Espíritu, for example, that produce other brands, but it's not at the moment anything considered in order to move or to have other factories producing Trinidad.
La decisión fue muy acertada.
And he thinks that the decision was very good. Was a very good decision to have the Pinar del Rio factory as the headquarters of Trinidad, because they have obtaining very good results, and the quality of the production has been kept without any problem.
One more question. I would like to ask more information about the vintage program. Basically, we are now, you're coming out now with a Trinidad that is a 10 years old vintage, but I think everybody knows that for us aficionados, a vintage should be more than 20 years at least. So I would like to ask to Emilio and to Miguel if they think that the tobacco that is being rolled in 2010 over will age in the same way that tobacco was rolled before the year 2000, if they can say, if they know how it will age.
Nuevo proyecto de vintage. Para él, un tabaco vintage después de 20 años. Pero él quiere saber si hay alguna diferencia entre el tabaco producido antes de 2010 para envejecer el tabaco después de producido en 2010, porque ese tabaco que se está sacando en general es producido después de 2010, para que tiene 10 años de producción. Si tabacos producidos antes del 2010 envejecen diferente, tienen diferentes características.
Realmente el tabaco cubano, repito, envejece, fermenta, proceso de añejamiento, si procede de las vegas finas del Pinar del Río, sobre todo la tripa y el capote, resiste lo mismo. El problema está, como explicaba anteriormente, si se quiere hacer algo especial, como en el vino, en el whisky, se le da más fermentación, más añejamiento y sale una edición especial. Pero el proceso básico lo resiste igual, no tiene diferencia ninguna. Miguel decía una cosa en cuanto a la finca, y aprovecho para volver a eso. Es verdad que se selecciona el mejor tabaco, las mejores fincas, porque nada en la realidad se cumple al 100%. Estás en la zona de Vuelta Abajo, estás en la Vega Fina, pero los vegueros no son iguales en cuanto a la disciplina tecnológica. Un veguero totalmente disciplinado va a producir el mejor tabaco, y ese es el que se selecciona para Coiba, para Trinidad, para todo lo que queramos hacer, destacar como mejor. Pero no es porque haya una diferencia en la zona. Es Vega Fina, y Vega Fina cumple con los requisitos organolépticos que caracterizan al tabaco cubano en el mundo.
The aging of the Cuban tobacco, as he's explained from the beginning, is equally for all the brands. Depending on the blend of the brand, that it could be in one way or another way. But all of the Cuban cigar will resist the time, not only 10 years, but more than 10 years, depending on the blend and depending on the quality of the tobacco. So he repeated it again, that in the cases, for example, of Trinidad and Coiba, where not only the raw material comes from the Vuelta Abajo zone, but also from the best plantation, of course, in these cases, the situation is better when you curing or fermenting or do any process to the tobacco, because it's also the skill of the people that have been working with the raw material that produce better results. All of that is behind this process. And I can tell from my experience also in this process of vintage, and I have been privileged to work, because here in London, I would say is the origin of the vintage. And there are certain cigars with 20 years that are perfect. I have been even smoked cigars that 50 years. In Cuban cigar, you can find even cigar with 100 years, and still they have aroma and they have certain organoleptic characteristics, which is amazing. So the process of vintage, or the concept of vintage that has been now relaunched by Habanos, and gives a different certain period of from 5 to 9, from 10 to 15, more than 20 years. In all of the cases, the characteristics are different because they are different, but still they will be vintage. I mean, they will be certain cigar with certain age, and still you will have certain characteristics that will change. And maybe in a 20 years old cigar, you will find that the aroma is maybe less, but still you have other things. But in the 10 years, you find other things. So every single period will give something different. And when you smoke one cigar that is 5 years old or one cigar that is 50 years old, in both of them will find something different, but you will enjoy both. That's my personal experience.
That's wonderful. I think we've kept everybody far too long as it is.
Just one more, sorry.
No, I
Just
think
one
not.
more question.
Let me elaborate.
Will the vintage program be extended also to other brands?
This could be.
Good question. Actually, I'm
But
glad you did that.
as we have in our Q&A, let us surprise you in the future. Okay? But just talking about the vintage program, just something important. You know, we have different categories. Let's say vintage 10, vintage 15, or vintage 14.
You should give us a bit more than that. Give us a special insight into what's going on.
And super vintage above 20 years. And for the first time, the vintage process is being included into the processes set by the appellation of origin of Habanos. So that makes the difference. So for the first time, the DOP Habanos, appellation of origin Habanos, is checking the process and certifying the process. So that's the difference. But yes, for sure.
Brilliant. Well, look, that's fantastic. You told us absolutely nothing, but you said it beautifully. So you kept us all in the dark, and I think it's sad. That we,
Kind of marketing as well.
I know. It's brilliant. You say it so beautifully, but we got.
In the program.
I know it was a difficult question, and it was parried beautifully. And we're all waiting now to on this vintage program, the super vintage and all that. I just want to say first of all, thank you to Gemma Freeman for organising such an amazing event. And I'd really like to thank the panel. Edward, you've got an original Trinidad.
Yes, I know we're running out of time, Nick, but I just wanted to say two things. One, on behalf of all of us present at this conference, and also on behalf of all cigar lovers from all over the world, to thank you, Anna, and your colleagues, and all of Habanos for creating such a great instrument of pleasure for us. I also have something here to present to you, Anna. We talked about vintages, we talked about the first Trinidad, but I am very proud to hold in my hand one of the very first Trinidads. It's still in its own cellophane, you can hardly see the cigar. It hasn't seen the light of the day up to today, and I'd like to present this to you, Anna.
Oh, thank you.
It was given to me by a dear friend of mine more than 20 years.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh my goodness. That is really history. Thank you. And thank you everyone for being so great ambassadors of the brand. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, class dismissed.
38?